Hi, I'm Natalie Jill, fat loss expert turned high performance coach. When odds are stacked against us, how do we shift and create everything from nothing? How do we level up when we aren't feeling it yet or we've had a big setback? On this podcast, I'll be talking to some of the most inspiring and courageous men and women on this planet who, at their worst, learned how to achieve success greater than they ever dreamed possible, leveling up and creating everything from nothing. Dwayne Clark grew up poor, so poor that his mom used to steal potatoes from her employer to feed her children for a week. And Dwayne, he had to learn how to negotiate as a child to ensure that they'd have utilities and running water. But Dwayne learned a powerful perspective as a young boy. And this perspective shift changed his life. He learned that he could view poverty as poor him, or he could view poverty as being the greatest school ever. And he chose that. Today, Dwayne is a serial entrepreneur and runs one of the nation's premier assisted living communities with over 30 locations, 2,000 staff members, and over 60,000 residents served. He also is an award-winning film producer, author, and major philanthropist. As CEO of the Aegis Living community, one of the most sought-after assisted living facilities in the U.S., he's also the producer of the award-winning film Big Sonia. And Full Court, the Spencer Haywood Story about the iconic NBA Hall of Famer. In his latest book, 30 Summers Left, he shares the lessons from longevity that he has amassed from his latest health and wellness research on living the best life possible. Join in today and learn exactly how Dwayne Clark levels up and created everything from nothing. Today on Leveling Up, I've got Dwayne Clark, and I'm so excited to chat with you today, Dwayne, because Dwayne is an author. He's a playwright. He's also a CEO of Aegis Living, which is a senior housing community. And I am so excited to talk with you because you're so successful. People see you thrive in your space, but I know that's not always who you were. So Dwayne, thanks for being here. And I'm dying to jump into who you were before all of this.
No, Natalie, first of all, thanks for having me on the show. I'm jazzed to be here. I'm honored to be on your show, and I'd love to tell my story.
Yes, let's go. So who were you before all this?
Well, I grew up, my mom was a single mom, kind of struggled. She was an immigrant. I was the youngest of 4 children. My closest sibling was almost 8 years older than me. So I was kind of the oops child of our family. And we grew up poor. And I always like to define poor because I think people use that term very loosely. It's like, well, we're poor. We can't buy the new Jordan tennis shoes. We were more than that kind of poor. We were poor that we didn't have food to eat.
Wow.
And I was kind of a juvenile delinquent in that, my 2 favorite things growing up were girls and racing cars. And sometimes the order flipped which was the priority. I decided I really didn't need high school. And so I got in some trouble when I was a teenager. And my mom decided to pull me out of public school, send me away 100 miles and send me to a private Catholic high school. So I lived with a family by myself when I was about 16 years old. And my mom was a line cook in a restaurant. So she finally got enough money to move us into this little ratty 1-bedroom apartment. And she comes home one day and she says, we don't have any money. And I go, smart aleck kid. I'm like, what's new? Yeah, we don't have any money. And she walks over to her little refrigerator in the kitchen just off the main room, opens this old antique refrigerator, and there's a can of milk in it, an onion, and a half a cube of butter. And she turns around, looks at me in a very solemn way, and she said, I'm going to have to steal potatoes from work.
Wow.
And my mom was a very, very proper woman, very well-mannered, never did anything dishonest, stole anything in her life. And I was kind of shocked at this,
Mm-hmm.
And so she said, if I steal enough potatoes, like 10 or 12 pounds of potatoes, we can eat this for the next 2 weeks, and this will be our subsistence. And she refused to steal any meat or anything else because it was too expensive. And she said, and I want you to know when I get paid, we're going to pay these back with interest. So this is just a loan. So the next morning at 4 a.m, it was like a bank heist. We drive to her work. She goes in the kitchen, 5-gallon bucket of potatoes she brings out. Then we made potato soup for 2 weeks. And during that time, she gave me an infinite amount of wisdom. She said, she was a great cheerleader of mine. And one of the things that parents don't do enough today is breed confidence into their children. And she said, I know you're going to go on to be something incredible. You're going to have a fabulous life. You're probably going to maybe you're going to be president of this country or whatever. But, I know you're going to have people work for you. And what I want you to remember is if you're always there for your people will always be there for you.
Wow.
And I didn't really realize the gravity of that advice when I was 16 years old.
Mm-hmm.
I do now. And because of that, when I started my company, we have almost 3,000 employees now. The first thing that I did was I started the Potato Soup Foundation, and we went on to supply grants and all kinds of things for hundreds of people that are going through crisis. We have a $1 meal program where you can get a full-on balanced meal for $1. You can take home a meal of 5 for your family for $5. So no one will ever go hungry in our company. And
gosh, what I love so much about that initial experience with your mom is, desperate times call for desperate acts. And I get that. But what I love about that is I think a lot of people in that situation, they don't explain it to their kids. They just kind of do it. And I loved kind of the ethical stance behind it. Like she was desperate. She wanted to feed her kids.
Right.
And but how she explained it to you and I'm going to pay it back. This is not right. With interest. I mean, wow.
Yeah. Yeah.
I just got chills hearing that.
Yeah. Yeah. It left, it just an absolute incredible, indelible imprint on me. And I think, now that I'm a CEO of a company, I've got thousands of people who work for me. It bred a sensitivity into me that I probably wouldn't have had if I didn't have that experience.
Now, did you have siblings? Was it just you?
Had siblings, but by that time, again, my closest sibling was 8 years older than me. So they were pretty much out of the house on their own, doing their own thing. So
being poor as a child, and I mean, I get what you're saying. Like here you are really struggling, and then here your mom takes a stand, like she saves money to even get you into private school, which is pretty telling.
I got a church scholarship to go. My mom didn't have the money to pay, so I got a church scholarship. Yeah.
Okay. Even better, because I'm sure applying for that wasn't easy either.
Yeah.
What did you believe about yourself as a child growing up that poor?
I just thought it was a way of life. I think, you get thrown into a paradigm of life where you know no different, right? Mm-hmm. And, I didn't grow up with computers and the internet and iPhones and those things. I grew up in the 70s and the 80s where we didn't have those things. So my exposure was limited to my environment. But the thing I would see, whether, you're watching a television show or whatever, you'd kind of fantasize about this lifestyle. Mm-hmm. And I think I learned at a very early age that I had two choices in life about poverty. One, I could say, poor me, I grew up poor. Why is everything against me? Why is the world against me? Why have I had to have this? Or I could say, man, growing up in poverty is the greatest university I could ever go to, and use it as rocket fuel to run as far from poverty as humanly possible. And I chose the latter because I wanted to say, I am so lucky to have grown up in that kind of atmosphere. Because I know what I didn't want. I didn't want to, have bill collectors call me. My mom would work all day and the bill collectors would call us all day long. And I would be 10, 11 years old negotiating with the phone company to keep our phone on for 3-4 days.
At 10 or 11 years old?
Absolutely. And, I'd ride my 10-speed bike down and say, hey, I've got $1.62. If I come down and pay it right now, will you keep it on for another week? So,
Did it work?
Absolutely. Because I think people took pity on an 11-year-old bringing in their piggy bank to pay the phone bill. But here's what it taught me. A lot of people say, oh, that's so sad. So it's not sad. You can look at it that way. You can say it's sad. But reality, at 10 or 11 years old, I learned the skill of negotiation.
You learned vulnerability too.
Absolutely vulnerability. But you learn, hey, this is how I interact with people that, want something from me. And this is how I negotiate. With manners, with being polite, with being sincere, with being honest. And so, that became one of the strengths of mine was negotiation. In fact, my first job before I got into healthcare, I worked in law enforcement and I became a hostage negotiator. So, I'm not sure that I would have those kinds of experiences and that kind of resolute kind of personality if I hadn't had those experiences in poverty.
I love that mindset shift because you're right. It's really like that victim versus being accountable. And you chose, instead of being a victim, to be responsible and change your perspective around poverty. And I love that you did that. And it sounds like you decided that at a pretty early age. And it was a gift. Yeah,
it was an extreme gift. I'm sure you probably remember Dr. Wayne Dyer, who passed away a couple of years ago.
Sure.
Wayne was actually a mentor of mine. And he used, I had an abusive father growing up, and my mom divorced him when I was about 6 years old. Mm-hmm. And he was physically and verbally abusive. He was a horrible man. And so I would bemoan to Wayne about my father. He goes, "Oh, your dad was awesome." And I would look at him and go, "No, I don't think you understand. He would beat my mom. He would beat my sister." He's like, "Yeah, he's incredible." And I'm like, "I'm not communicating with you here, Wayne." He's like, "Well, let's look at this. Are you a good father?" I go, "Well, I'm a phenomenal father. I would never do any of those things to my kids." He goes, "Do you love your children?" Yeah. He says, "Are you a good husband?" Yeah, I'm a phenomenal husband. He goes, "Well, yeah, your dad taught you parenting in reverse." And so he taught me this concept, Dr. Dyer, about, well, things happen to you, and sometimes you just learn in reverse. Because of the things that happen to you, you're going to flip that and go, well, I'm not going to be that person. So I think for your listeners out there, there's a lot of opportunity for us to look and say, well, I can learn in reverse on this thing, because otherwise the poor me thing doesn't get you anywhere. It doesn't advance you in life one step.
So powerful. It's really a shift in perspective. It's all how you look at things.
Absolutely. Yeah. So I just feel so fortunate, Natalie, that I had that experience, because, I feel like I went to Harvard University growing up, and it allowed me to do a lot of things that have made me very successful in life.
And it sounds like your mom also taught you about being responsible. So you learned that she wasn't a victim. Like, she was taking responsibility. I mean, even the leaving your dad.
Yeah. Yeah. My mom would work like 16 hours a day. She took care of her mother. So after she worked 16 hours a day, she'd go to the nursing home to see her mother for 2 hours a day, come home, get very little sleep, make me dinner, whatever. And, just had an incredible work ethic. And
wow,
I really admired that about her. And so, she never sat around, or, we never had public assistance or welfare or any of that thing. I mean, if she had to go work 3 jobs, she worked 3 jobs. And she taught me that mentality. I started working when I was 7 years old. I was a dishwasher in an airport restaurant where she was the line cook. And I was so little that I used to have to stand on a milk box to open the dishwasher. And, I thought this was phenomenal. God, I'm having fun, and I get to use this machine. And, it's just what I did. And so I worked not full time, but every year of my life since I was 7 years old. And I look at that as a blessing. It's just incredible that I've been able to do that.
Yeah, no, it truly, because you've had a lot of different things that you've done, like a lot of different career paths, like here, hostage negotiator, author, playwright. Like, what did you want to be when you grew up, when you were a kid?
Well, I thought I wanted to be a famous criminal defense attorney.
Why that?
Well, I think I watched too much Perry Mason, Dragnet, those kinds of things. So, I was a little bit of a latchkey kid who watched a lot of television.
Okay.
And so I grew up thinking, well, this would be cool to be this defender of the vulnerable, and so on.
Yeah.
So I got a scholarship to go to college. I went to college. My junior year, my scholarship ran out, and I ran out of money. And a friend of mine said, I think you're too nice a guy to be a criminal defense attorney.
You're too what?
He said, I think you're too nice a guy to be a criminal defense attorney.
Okay.
You don't really want to be around criminals. And I said, oh, yeah, I can do this. And he goes, all right, well, since you're out of money, why don't you go see if you can get a job in a prison? And I said, okay. So I went and worked in a maximum security prison, and which was one of the worst prisons in the United States. It was in Walla Walla, Washington. And the year I went to work there, it was rated as the 10th most dangerous prison in the United States. And
what makes it dangerous? That working there was dangerous, or
were people being murdered constantly? I mean, there was probably 6 murders my first year.
Wow.
Staff were being assaulted, hostages were being taken. So it was out of control. And so I thought, well, I'm going to work here 1 or 2 years, save enough money, go back to school.
Okay.
I ended up working there in the system for 6.5 years. And that's where I was trained as a hostage negotiator, was on the tactical SWAT team, did a bunch of things that are kind of crazy. Worked as an institutional investigator, worked undercover, did all kinds of things. And so then in my last year there, in the last couple of years, I started to get more in the healthcare bent. I really liked healthcare. And so I ran a prison clinic and would hire doctors and dentists. And, I'm young. I'm like 23, 24 years old doing this. And I'm like, I really like doing this. I really like healthcare. So I was going to quit because it was too crazy a life. My sister called me. This is in 1985, so a long time ago.
Okay.
And she calls me and she said, well, if you're going to quit, I said, I think I'm going to quit. I'm going to go back to law school. I've saved enough money. She goes, why did he go work in senior housing? And I said, I don't know anything about old people.
And that's so random and opposite from what you were doing.
Absolutely. That's what I said to her. And I said, I know about bank robbers and rapists and murderers. I don't know anything about old people. And she goes, well, you work in an institution. You do food service, you do activities, you do security. She goes, so you have some common skills. I'm like, okay, I think that's a stretch, but okay. She goes, well, I'm just asked one favor. Go down to the library, because this is before computers, 1985. She said, read this study called The Grain of America. It's like a 400-page study produced by the federal government. So I go down to the library, spend like 3 days reading this 400-page study, and I'm like, oh my God, the world is going to be white. The world is going to be filled with seniors. It's going to be all these gray-haired people walking around. So I left and I interviewed with this company, and they hired me as a manager in training. And, I shot up to a vice president. I was recruited away by an executive vice president of a public company, took a company public. And then 22 years ago, I started Aegis Living, which we've been voted best company to work for 12 times and Glassdoor top 50. So
take me back a little bit to the vision of that, because, okay, so when you read the study Grain of America, and you hear the world's going to be filled with seniors, what was the motive then? Was it that that's the business to be in because there's a lot of people, or was it more a motive of like, I want to help these people? What was the vision or the motive behind that? Because the reason I'm asking is that I typically find that people find success in things when they're focusing out, when there's a bigger thing besides themselves and money. And that's what I'm curious about.
Well, again, going back to Dr. Wayne Dyer, we tend to learn in reverse. And what I learned working in the prison system is my friend was right, that the fact that I wasn't really loving working with criminals, and that it was incongruent with my personality and my skill, that I had made more friends with the criminals than I had enemies. And that wasn't a good characteristic of a guy that's going to be really good in that industry.
That you became friends and
not friends like I'd go out to beer with the murderer, but friends like people respected me and liked me. And so I wasn't the John Wayne, kind of macho guy in this business. So my personality was one where, compassion, vulnerability, love.
Yeah. That's what's coming up for me, that you actually heard them. You saw them as people, not criminals.
Exactly. And that's why they liked me. So I made that discovery about myself when I was 26 years old. And so when I read this study, I said, well, here's where a part of me can come out. I've never really looked at it as, hey, this is a phenomenal business opportunity. Now, I'm smart enough and intelligent enough and savvy enough to know that. I mean, my company owns $3 billion worth of real estate. So, it is a business opportunity. We know that. But before that, you have to be compassionate with your staff. You have to be compassionate with the people you serve. You have to be compassionate with their families, the daughters and the sons and so on. And that's where my personality came out. That's where I found this richness in my life that, you can have a job that you absolutely love and you feel good about what you're doing in the world. So that's the two for me.
What have you learned about seniors? Because there is the Grain of America and there is so many of them. What have you learned about them?
Well, I've learned a lot. Last week, I interviewed Margaret, who's 106 in July, and Ina, who's 101 this month. And, sitting down with people, those two women who are beautiful in every way and have 207 years combined on this planet, you learn a lot about life. First of all, I have a book coming out called 30 Summers More. It comes out in September. I spent the last 5 years researching why people live well and how they live long. And I've traveled extensive, traveled to 82 countries. So every time I go to a country, I sit down with seniors and people and talk about it. So this book is filled with all kinds of juicy nuggets about how to live well and long. But in talking to Ida and Margaret, what I discovered was a variety of characteristics about those two issues, living long and living well. First of all, they have no fear of death, none. In fact, Ina told me, hey, I already got my angel wings picked out. I'm ready to go whenever the good Lord calls me. All of them had a belief system, whether it's a religious belief or a belief in a higher power. They both had a belief system. Both of those ladies walked a ton. Margaret, as 106, never had a driver's license, so she walked everywhere. I learned that both of them had a sense of purpose. People tend to retire in their 60s. They want to go play golf or go skiing or go boating the rest of their life. Those people, and there's good science behind this, actually die early. So Ina and Margaret actually worked into their 80s doing some kind of things. So, you have to have this purpose in life. In fact, Harvard has the longest longevity study in the history of man. It's been going on for almost 80 years. John F. Kennedy was a member of it originally. And what they found is they studied genetics extensively, diet, longevity, all these things. And what they found was if you're in a happy marriage at the age of 50, not just a marriage, not a bad marriage, but a happy marriage at the age of 50, it'll add as much as 10 years life expectancy to your life. So, these guys were married. They were married happily into their 50s. They ate very little meat. They had lots and lots of vegetables. But they said, we'd maybe eat 2 or 3 ounces of meat. We weren't big meat eaters.
2 or 3 ounces of meat, like a day, a week, or what?
At a serving, at a serving. But, their plate was 2/3 vegetables and 3 ounces of meat. So you learn a lot about how to live well, how to live long. And you develop this perspective of fortitude with seniors that I find so refreshing,
What about community? Because we hear a lot about that, about the importance of community and tribe. Was that a big theme with them or no?
Absolutely. And that's a big part of my book is community is huge. And one of the things that I tell people is it's not just community, because some people say, well, I have a religious community or work community or whatever. One of the things I try to encourage people to do is have a community that's 10 to 15 years younger than you. And this is important. And here's why.
I love that.
As you age, you will start to get into a routine of doing things with the friends of their same age. Yep. And here's what happens. You go to dinner and they go, oh, God, my hip is killing me. And they're like, well, I just had my knee replacement last week. Yep. I'm like, hey, well, look at the skin cancer I had taken off my arm. So that is that's the bulk of your conversation.
You're preaching to the choir with me right now. I don't know if you know, my book's called Aging in Reverse for this exact reason.
Oh, okay. Well, good. Well, you've got to be 30 years old looking at you.
I'm 47, but thank you.
Well, I'm 60, so I got a couple years on you. But so what happens, and where this was an aha moment for me, we have this friend who's a well-known Hollywood actor, and he came to town, and he's 44 and 42 at the time, and his girlfriend was 27. And they said, well, let's go out on the town. And my wife, who's very vibrant, active, and healthy, they're like, okay. And going out in the town to us means you go to dinner, maybe go to a show or movie, and you're home by 11:30, 12.
Yeah, me too.
So we go, I'm ready to go to bed at 10:45. Yeah. So we go out in the town, and when we find ourselves in this club at 2 a.m, and I'm looking at my wife, and I'm like, it's 2 a.m. She goes, yeah, isn't this phenomenal?
Wow.
So we went to this club with them, and then we went, and there was this all-night ice cream shop that we found ourselves having ice cream at 3:00 in the morning. And my wife and I are walking to our car, and we said, when is the last time we did this? As I was 58 at the time. She was 56. She goes, I don't remember, but this feels good. We feel vibrant again.
Yes. I love that. I love that you're saying this. It's funny. I recently realized I have a lot of friends at different ages. I do have a lot of friends, 10, 15, even 20 years younger than me. Yep. And I find that my energy around them makes me feel younger because I get out of that mindset of what's old or the aches and pains or whatever else is going on. And you start adopting that as the norm. I love that you just said that.
It's not only those things, it's the athletics things. So I have a foundation called D1 Foundation, and it's comprised of male high school athletes that are super athletes. All these guys have anywhere from 5 to 45 D1 college offers. So these are, 2 of my kids are the number 1 football picks in the United States for the class of 19 and 20. So these are supreme athletes. So I took them out 2 nights ago, and I surprised them. And these are kids that come from impoverished homes, much like me, that are super athletes but need some guidance in life. And I took them out to the best clothing store in Seattle, and I got them all made-to-measure custom suits, which these kids have never had a suit before, but let alone an Italian made-to-measure. And they were phenomenal. And so we did the town. These kids are 17, 18 years old. We did the town that night, and we were out till 11 o'clock at night. We were walking the streets and laughing and, using language that they were teaching me and a handshake that I'd never done before that I still can't remember. And I just, and I came home and my wife's like, you were just buzzing. And I'm like, yeah, I was with my boys, and it's so interesting how youth can actually trigger our immune system. In fact, this is probably not a great example, but the current North Korea leader's grandfather was big into longevity. And so he would go for 2 hours a day and watch a grade school kids and be amongst their energy. And he felt like that would add years to his life. And there's a lot of proof to that.
Yep.
Ina, the 101-year-old, was a teacher that taught for years and years and years. And she said, my children are the ones that extended my life expectancy.
Yeah. Having a daughter later in my life, I feel has done that for me. Like I was a little bit later having her, but I love that I'm around that energy.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's good. You pick up on this youth and you get out of your routine. I'm a member of an organization called YPO, Young Presidents Organization. Once you turn 50, they put you in kind of the old farts club. You're in the old guys club. So, I'm 60 now. And, but I still hang out with these 40-year-old CEOs. And, they do, I was just with them in Italy. They do the craziest things. They want to run up these mountaintops and jump out of airplanes and go heli skiing. And we did a couple years ago, we hired 20 Navy SEALs from Afghanistan, did desert maneuvers in Arizona. And, he's like, what? Should I be doing this at this age? And then he's like, I'm all in, racing cars and, all kinds of crazy stuff. But it's this vibrancy of life, and
totally.
You start to forget your age, which I think is great. We should forget our age
and
every
be
day.
Ageless. Yeah.
Absolutely.
I love this. You're so up my alley right now with everything you're saying, and it makes sense. And so how do you do that what's coming up for me is you work with seniors, like that's your main business. They're amongst other seniors. How does the vibe stay that way with that? Because you're in a senior community, you're watching people get sick, you're watching people die, you've got people older. It's like basically the end of your life community. What do you find works or doesn't work with them?
Well, I call it moments of joy.
Okay.
And if you think about, your day and then you reflect back on it, what was my moment of joy today? And it could be your daughter came in and said, I love you, Mom, and gave you a big hug. It could be you got an unexpected check in the mail. It could be, someone said, God, you look really nice today. Whatever that is. What we try to do at Aegis is we try to string together moments of joy for these residents. And sometimes it's the simplest of things. Sometimes it's giving hugs to people. Sometimes it's reminiscing with people. One of the tragedies of our country, and we do it more than Asia does it or Europe does it or whatever. We tend to put old people in a box.
Yep.
And we don't see them. We don't see them for who they are. We look at them and go, oh God, must be sad to be you and you're old and you're frail and so on. And we forget these people had phenomenal careers and lifestyles and mortgages and businesses and sex lives and all these things. They're people. They're people, right? Yeah. So we forget and we judge them and categorize them based on who they are. And all people want to do, just like you, just like me, we want to be seen for the contribution we made to this planet. So, if we can just acknowledge people for, hey, this is the contribution you've made. I mean, some of the most incredible people I've met, people who worked on the Manhattan Project. I met the woman who put the O in Cheerios. I met, people that were involved in NASA. Movie stars. I met the original Jane. She lived in our building from the Tarzan movies. So all these incredible people that you go, oh, well, tell me about your life. What did you do? And that's when you see the blood come up to the front of their face and they get excited about telling you about your life. Just like, doing a podcast, right? I mean, we're telling you about our life. This is what I'm excited about. And we tend to steal those moments from seniors.
Gosh, that's so insightful what you're sharing here. I saw a post going around social media recently. I think it was viral on Facebook, and it had somebody had done this artist series of they took somebody that was elder and they would have them standing in a mirror. So you would see them now and a picture of them when they were, 40, 50 years ago.
Right.
And it was wild. I mean, that's why it went viral. I mean, it's just it's so true because what you're saying really makes sense. And it must be sad that they don't feel relevant anymore. They don't feel heard or seen, and people do dismiss.
Yeah. If you just look at what makes Natalie, and then look at seniors, well, you take away their story, you take away how they're going to dress today, you take away their food choice, you take away their family, you take away all the things that you value, and pretty soon, who are you? What are you? What's your history? That's the sensitivity that you have to have. That's the compassion that we train the Aegis staff with is you have to look at that and you have to give them back those things. Let them dress a little crazy today because it's their choice. It's their identity. It's their brand. I have a film company called True Productions, and we make socially conscious films that are all true stories. And we made a film about 4 years ago called Big Sonia. And Sonia is a 90-year-old. She may be 91 now. 91, 92-year-old Auschwitz survivor from the Holocaust. And she was in Auschwitz. I think she was 13, 14 years old. And the movie's about her stories of courage, but she runs a tailor shop at 90 years old in an abandoned mall in Kansas City. And the movie's just gone crazy. It's won all kinds of film festival awards and so on. But what's been so great about Sonia, she's about 4'10", and she dresses in leopard. So everything's leopard, from the steering wheel on her car to, her favorite clothing, her shoes, whatever. And what's been so great about her is she has this identity. And she goes out and lectures everybody from prisoners to high school kids about what courage is and, living through Auschwitz and so on. And you can see the vibrancy in her because she's got back the ability to give to people. And again, I think that's one of the greatest thefts in America is we take away seniors' purpose and their ability to give back to our community. So that's a big deal.
That's amazing. I love this. And I love that you've made this. I can tell you're very passionate about this and you care. And I believe that's why you're so successful. I don't believe it's always about a business mind. I think that if somebody goes into something with just the business savvy, if there's no true passion, compassion, and care for what they're doing, I believe that's why it doesn't work.
Well, it's thinly veiled, right? I mean, the people that go in saying, everybody wants to be socially conscious this day because it's the cool thing to be. But it's thinly veiled and people see through that. And they'll say, well, why do you believe in that? What's your story? What's the background? What rooted you in that? Did somebody just tell you should put that in a mission statement? That's why you're doing it. So I think people want to see the soul of a company. We changed corporate office at our company about 2 years ago. And the reason we did this is we had a very nice office. I owned it personally, had a beautiful 2-story waterfall in it. And I was walking around one day. I like to walk and read. So I'm walking through the office and I'm reading this recruiting brochure for Aegis. And I'm reading it.
How do you walk and read? That's a whole other skill set.
Very carefully. Yeah. And so I'm reading this and I'm like, well, how is this potential employee really see the soul of our company? Yeah. So I went to our CFO and I said, we're going to buy another office building and we're going to build it so that people see the soul of our company. And he's like, what do you mean by that? I go, well, this is this little flat piece of paper. How are they going to tell who we are and what we do? Mm-hmm. And so he's like, okay. So we went and found this office building and we built a building. People can go on my website and see it. That has phenomenal art installations. We even have a treehouse in the backyard. So you can be a little child in the treehouse with candy and lay on the floor and so on.
I love it.
But we built all kinds of things in here that show the soul of our company. Now, our closing rate on potential employees in our old building was like 68, 70% in terms of getting them, talking to them to come work for us. Our closing rate in our new building is like 97%. And you say, well, why? Why is that? Is it because it's a newer building? No, it's because they can see the soul and the purpose and the intent of our company. So we have a whole wall of our office building, probably 30 feet across. It's called the Purpose Wall. And every year, we have this conference that I put on for a variety of people called EPIC. It stands for Empower People, Inspire Consciousness. And we have world-class speakers that come to it. That's how I first met Dr. Dwayne Dyer. And, everyone from Hollywood movie stars like Susan Sarandon and Gina Davis and Ashley Judd to great philosophers like Deepak Chopra and Wayne Dyer. So one of the things we do at EPIC, we started about 5 years ago, is I said, take your iPhone and I'm going to give each team of 8 people $500. And I want you to go out there and change a person's life. And then I want you to bring back the video and we're going to have a competition about who changed this person's life the most. So we have 11 teams and we have 5 judges. About 2 years ago, Sharon Stone was one of our guests. And she said, well, can I help judge? I swear we cried for 2 hours together watching these videos. So it's they're emotional, and then we post the stories of what each team does on this purpose wall. So when you go in, there's a little colorful little tag that says, okay, I'll give you an example. One woman hadn't had running water for 5 years. Her house had not had running water for 5 years. She would go out to her neighbor's garden hose and fill a bucket and bring it in to flush the toilet or whatever, like 5 times a day. And this is in the middle of Seattle. This isn't in, someplace out. So this team went in and they found out that her water main in her front yard had broke. So each of these teams are challenged with leveraging their $500.
Yeah.
So this was like, so they had to go out and find a construction company. They got people to make donations. They challenged the neighbors to help. So, I mean, this was like a $20,000 job. And they dug up this woman's yard, fixed the main, and they have a video of her turning,
You know what I love about that? I hope people really hear this, and especially in a world of social media and fakeness and having to look perfect and everything's together. People really do care when they see real vulnerability and authenticity. And when people ask for help, people do care.
Right. Yeah.
I think there's a lot of people afraid to share because of being judged, but I hope more people do share. Because
absolutely. Yeah. So what makes our world better, right? I mean, it's one of the reasons that you do your podcast. It's life improvement. Going back to your question of what I've learned from seniors, I just had a birthday party 2 weeks ago that my wife put on that was a blowout party for 350 people. And I wanted to do a video with people about what I'd learned over the last 60 years. And so I did a video. It's now on YouTube. It's called 60 Years of Wisdom. And it's largely based on what I've learned from what I call my oracles, my seniors that have taught me. And the thing's going viral now. I think we posted 2 days ago and it's got several thousands of views. But
that's incredible.
It's the kind of thing that, you bring this perspective of life and you get perspective from all kinds of people. And where I find I get most perspective are not with the people that are most like me, but the people that are most unlike me. Mm-hmm. So whether that's a homeless person, whether that's an impoverished kid, whether that's a senior, whoever it is, whether it's a woman in Afghanistan, that you met on your travels, it's the people that most unlike you that you gain worldly perspective. And that's what makes people interesting, is to have great perspective.
Yeah. And asking and being curious about people, I would imagine. And that's something that sounds like you do very well.
I know your podcast is all about stories. I love hearing people's stories because we all have a story to tell,
Yeah.
And you just you got to mind for it.
And it's interesting to me that a lot of people don't bother asking about people's stories, but like, I don't know about you, but I can tell you, I totally change my opinion about people when I know their story. Like I'll meet somebody and I have like my judgment comes up, my opinions, then I get to know them and I'm curious and I have a whole different love for them.
It's funny you say that. So I told you about Epic, this conference we put on, and every year there's a theme of Epic. And so I think it was 2 years ago, the theme was judgment. And what I wanted to do was I wanted to change people's perception of how they judge people, because we judge so many people by the media. So we had all these people that had been judged in the media come as speakers. So I'll tell you the lineup. I can't remember them all. I think we had 8 that year, 9 speakers that year. But we had Amanda Knox, the young woman who was allegedly murdered her roommate and then found innocent. We had Monica Lewinsky.
Okay.
We had Lance Armstrong. We had Macklemore. We had a guy named Sonny Barger, who was the founder of the Hells Angels.
Okay.
So we had all these people. And I said, I just want you to give your perceptions after you talk with them. And, you know these people from reading in the media and who they are and their reputation, their brand, whatever. And then I want you to listen to them. And then I want you to ask them questions. And then I want you to say, did my perception change? Ooh. And if your perception changed after meeting these people and talking to them, I want you to walk away thinking, maybe I should not rush to judgment about people without listening to their story. This totally flipped people's perception of judgment.
I love that.
It was an incredible learning for people about, well, maybe I let CNN guide me too much, or Fox News guide me too much, or ABC News guide me too much, or Bloomberg. And maybe I should just hold my judgment until I really know the information.
Oh, so good. That's so powerful. I love that you did that. Gosh. Okay. So I have so many questions and I'm not going to take up your entire day asking you a million questions, but there's some important ones I really want to understand. So you mentioned that you have 3 billion of real estate that your company owns. Tell me about that. How does that tie in with what you're doing? How did you get to that?
Well, we started from zero, so it's been a pretty good scale. But we have about 600 or 700 million under construction right now. We have 40 properties. We're the best in class. Aegis Living is the best senior housing operator in the country. Was
that your vision initially though? Like, I'm wondering that too. Cause like sometimes people say like, I want to be a billionaire. I want to be a millionaire. I want to have it. But did you have a vision or was it more like a one step at a time?
It was never my vision to be a millionaire or a billionaire. My vision was to have an employee first, phenomenal culture.
Okay.
Because it was about my daily happiness. And yet I was smart enough to know if I build an incredible culture, then I'll have an incredible company. And that usually ties to wealth creation and so on.
Yeah.
And I'm incredibly fortunate. I live in Seattle. We have some incredible service-oriented companies that were founded here. Starbucks, Nordstrom's, Boeing, although it's going through some bad news here, Zillow, really, Amazon. I mean, really incredible service-oriented companies that have been great for us.
Yeah.
And so I got to know a lot of those CEOs, and I would go and I'd say, well, what's your story? How did you do this? Whatever. Mm-hmm. So I got a lot of mentorship from those. Microsoft, I got a lot of mentorship.
Did you find a theme with them? Was there certain things that they all said?
Well, it's all about the people. It's all about the people you have. If you take the kind of emperor mindset that, hey, I'm great, I'm the greatest, I'm king, whatever, and I'm going to do this on my own because I'm super smart, you'll lose. I always tell my people, I'm the guy with the average intelligence in the room. I just know how to hire super smart people. And so you got to check your ego at the door, and you got to be comfortable with hiring people smarter than you. And I call it the making of the quilt. If you think about a quilt with all these patches, that's what I do. I try to add a patch to the quilt at a time.
Oh, that's such a good analogy.
That's creative. So, my new president who just started a few months ago, he was the president of Starbucks. He oversaw 18 billion in revenue and 183,000 employees. My chief people officer was the head of Amazon HR. She oversaw Amazon Marketplace and 35,000 employees. My head of marketing was the number 2 person at marketing at Nordstrom.
This is such golden advice because I hope people listening really hear this, because I think the tendency of a lot of people that set out to be an entrepreneur, start a business, is they hire people that are not smarter than them, so they could manage or tell them what to do. And whether they realize they're doing that consciously or subconsciously, that's what I see happen. And because they think they can't afford or they can't attract the smarter than, but you can't afford not to. Hiring the person smarter than you that's gifted at that is what builds a company. Absolutely.
And that's where the ego check has to take place, because if you don't do that, you're never going to advance. You got to advance beyond your intelligence and your paradigm and your experience. The only way you advance is by adding new people with new experience and new intelligence. So pretty simple equation.
I love this. I have a couple more questions for you. So one, you have such a strong resume. I mean, from being hostage negotiator to working in the prisons to author, playwright. Tell me how author and playwright fits in.
I love to write. I really feel like my purpose on this planet is to teach. Okay. And to teach in a big way, that whether that's through television shows or movies or books or whatever. And I just feel like I've gained a lot of wisdom, and I want to share it with people to help them in their lives. And I'm sincere about that. So whatever format that takes, I've written 6 books, I've done 7 or 8 movies, I've, written this play that's got a reading going on in Broadway in November. I just feel like that, and the play was a true story about, I went through a divorce and joined a men's group, and it's sad and comical and everything else. So it's called 7 Ways to Get There. But, I just feel like that's my journey. How I got into the movie industry was I started meeting all these celebrities doing Epic. I'd have all these guys come in and, A-list celebrities, and, they'd become friends with me. They'd say, Dwayne, I'm making this documentary that's a passion project. Would you give me $100,000 to help do it, and so on? And so I did this 3 or 4 times, and then I said, why am I doing this for other people? Why don't I do this for myself, for things that I really care about? And so that's when I started True Productions, and I started about 5 years ago, and I started making these social worthy documentaries.
That's so awesome. So it's kind of like a passion project of yours.
It's an absolute passion project, but it falls in line with my teaching. I feel like I can teach and I can tell a story about this, and You know, I've made everything from civil rights movies to, I told you about Big Sonia, the Holocaust survivor, to, love stories in China, to, all kinds of things.
So cool.
Yeah.
I love this. I love this. If somebody's listening right now, and this is a question I ask everybody, Dwayne, so I'm going to ask you too. If somebody's listening and they're in their own personal hardship, so whatever that is to them, they're probably in the victim mindset too, because sometimes they don't realize it. But usually when you're in a hardship, people tend to, they don't get out of it until they change that mindset.
Right.
I'm curious if somebody is listening and they're in their own personal victim spot, or hardship, whatever that is to them. Maybe it's the divorce, like what you were going through, or it's financial, whatever it is. If you were to give them 3 pieces of advice that they can start shifting to start changing their perspective and create everything from nothing, what would you tell them?
Well, I give you 2 pieces of advice that my mother gave me, and they were sayings. She used to say, you have to walk through the darkness to get through the light. Okay. That was one thing she would say. The other thing she would say, the gift is on the other side of the pain. And so I think people get stuck in the darkness, or they get stuck in the pain. And what you have to do is you just have to advance. It may not be you're going to run through the pain. You're going to get through it, but that pain is going to be a gift at some point. That pain is going to help you. That darkness is going to help you. But every day you have to advance. You have to move the ball forward. And that may be, maybe you're depressed and you're stuck in bed or whatever, and you don't want to get out of bed. And you're like, hey, I'm just going to get up and brush my teeth today. And tomorrow I'm going to go to the kitchen. And the next day I'm going to go buy groceries. And it's just advancing the ball. And then finally you'll get to the point where you say, I'm seeing the light now. I see the light. And then you have to take those painful moments and say, instead of wallow about them, say, how did this serve me in life? What did this teach me? How's this going to make me better? When you do that, then that's how we become richer. Don't let it just be a wound that you carry through life.
Well, I just love everything about this conversation and your perspective and your attitude and how accountable you are and how compassionate. And I think this is incredible. I know listeners are seeing that too, or hearing that too. I have a couple questions on how to find you and find out more. Like how do people find out about your senior living communities? Like where is it? Is that everywhere?
Yeah, we're on the West Coast. So we're in Seattle, San Francisco, LA, San Diego, Las Vegas.
Okay.
But you can just go to Aegis Living. It's AEGIS Living, LIVING.com. So that's our company. You can find me. I have my own personal brand. So it's Dwayne, DWAYNE, Dwayne J, just the letter J, period, Clark, CLARK.com.
And are you on social media at all, Dwayne?
I'm on social media. I'm on Facebook. I'm on Instagram. Dwayne J. Clark on Instagram. So, and if you go through my personal website, it'll link you into those things.
Okay. And your books, are they in stores, or where can people
My books are on Amazon. And the newest book, 30 Summers More, which is a phenomenal book. Dr. Orden from The Doctors wrote the foreword, and he's a great guy. So
I'm ordering the book stat because I need to know more.
It's going to be out in September. So about Labor Day, it'll be out on Amazon. So we can probably
pre-order it. Can we pre-order it? No, not yet.
I think probably next month you pre-order it. One of my books, My Mother, My Son, is a true story about me growing up with my mom.
I love that.
It's being made into a Hollywood movie.
Wow.
And so that book's done really, really
Congratulations on that. That's incredible.
Read it with a box of Kleenex because you'll tear up. All right.
I love it. Well, this has been fabulous. I've really enjoyed chatting with you. I hope listeners enjoy this. If you are listening to this podcast, please, if you love it, leave it a review, screenshot it, tag us both on Instagram. Let us know what you thought. And thank you so much for being here today.
It's been an honor. I love what you do.
Thanks for leveling up with us today. Please share this episode if you found it helpful so others can join in. And don't forget to hit that subscribe so you don't miss out on future shows. And if you would leave me a 5-star review, I appreciate those so much. I read all of them, and it's how I know that I'm giving you information that you find valuable. And come interact with me over on Instagram at Natalie Jill Fit. I read all the direct messages and comments over there. Make it a great day, creating everything from nothing.